AI, we talked a lot about the threats of AI. While it's still seen as having risks, it prompts significant optimism. It's gone up to half of the industry feeling confident. Hi, everyone. I don't think I've ever heard data and survey results referred to as a way to pump everyone up after eating too much lunch, but let's try it. Thank you all so much for being here. I just think this is the biggest crowd we've gotten for the State of the Cloud before. I'm really excited to share it with you all this year. Just as a reminder, if you haven't come to a State of the Cloud, thank you, presentation before, this is our third year doing this. We turn to you all to hear what's on your mind, what you're excited about, what you're concerned about, what you've done, really well in the past year, what you anticipate in the coming year. We fielded this really recently, so it's very fresh data, especially with it. You're going to see that that's important given everything that's come back, that is going on in the world. We have, hundreds of responses. You all are fantastic with this email list that it goes out to. You all provide great response rates. I'm so excited. We added 5 in-depth expert interviews this time based on interesting responses we got from our initial interest survey. We'll come back to that later. But just to add more color to just quantitative data, we added some qualitative work alongside it. And we heard from, CloudFest members and attendees from around the globe. So let's have a quick refresh of last year. So in 2024, our main story, so to speak, was that optimism dipped. And so we have some benchmarking metrics that we do in this survey every year just to sort of track. It's always fun to see where everyone else in the industry is and gauge yourself along those lines. Our main story was that optimism dipped. We asked about optimism. How optimistic are you about the future of the cloud-based tech industry? It went down. It was still a majority, but it did dip. When we got into open ends and we looked into why that was, it was driven mostly by people feeling interested in AI, but not sure about it. It was sort of unsure footing that drove a dip in optimism. So what's the story this year? It's still not as bright as 2023. The dip is still the same. We're going to talk about that in a second. But the interesting thing was there are more diverse stressors. And we saw a real change in how people are looking at and working with AI. AI is not the villain of the story this year. It's not quite the hero yet, because we see a lot of people being more interested in it, and it's bringing more positives to the table. They're just a more diverse array of stressors. To look at this a little more carefully, what we saw, that when we say a dip, it was really high in 2023, the optimism meter. At 86% of respondents agreeing, yes, I feel optimistic, either somewhat optimistic or very optimistic about the future of cloud-based technology. So it's gone down, but it's plateaued. We didn't continue to dip. The opportunities ahead for cloud technology outweigh the risks. That's our other optimism metric. So we can see that it was still a majority, but not as strong as the 86% in 2023. It was 61%. It went down. So, about a 13-point dip. This year it came up a little bit, but it's still in that medium. About half of the audience is agreeing that the opportunities outweigh the risks. One quick thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning, the full report is going to be available online to download following this speech. So, take all the pictures you want, but 20 pages of really digging into it is going to be available online. So again, we haven't gotten more pessimistic. What happened last year was we didn't see that the optimism dipped and a lot of people went into negative territory. It's just a lot of people sat in that, I'm not sure, category. That stayed the same. We didn't see more pessimism grow. But what's causing the concern that would bring down the optimism has diversified and become more intense. Security is still the main issue, AI and security, but that security worry is taking a lot of shapes this year. So we're going to dig into talking about security as a concern. Last year, it was almost all about AI. This year, it's just gotten a little more nuanced. So last year, we also saw a slight reprieve in people feeling that security is a definite risk for the cloud-based tech industry moving forward. So we can see it went from 64% last year, felt a little better. Not as many people agreed that security is a definite risk. This year went right back up. So now it's our highest point yet. 66% of respondents agreed, yes, security poses a major risk to the cloud moving forward. Last year, almost all the responses to what's behind your concerns about security were about AI. AI is still the top of the security concern, but as it's become better integrated and people get to know it better, other security concerns have risen. So it's not like security at large went down. It's still a really significant concern. But now it's not just AI, it's data sovereignty, it's geopolitical tensions and trust, it's changing regulations, it's just network vulnerabilities at large. So the security concern has diversified. Throughout, and you'll see, I'm not going to read all of these, but you can see if you get the full report afterwards, there are a lot of verbatim quotes from people in the open ends. But you can see here people, when we say, well, what's behind the concern, they're talking about EU and US and just being uncertain. So these aren't AI, they're other concerns about security coming in. I don't want to downplay the perceived threats of AI. It's still ranked as AI-based threats are still ranked the #1 risk to cloud computing in the next 2 to 3 years, but it's just not alone. So let's spend a minute talking about AI security. We can see some quotes here that often get to the human risk behind AI, in that people think they know it, they feel like they've gotten enough to be dangerous with it, and so there might be human error that comes in. That's a main driver of AI-based security threats that we saw. 4 in 10 respondents, when we asked, what are your concerns about AI, believe it's not secure enough. The higher concern was just changing regulations. So this question was asking, what are your concerns about AI in the cloud? So it was changing regulations, security, expense, not environmentally sustainable were the main ones. When we talked with experts in in-depth interviews, they mirrored that view of AI as a mix of pros and cons. It's got great potential. It's already proven really beneficial. We're excited to see where else it can go, but it could be used by bad actors. It could be used even by people who aren't necessarily bad actors, but uninformed actors, and it could exacerbate energy drains that already exist. So this year, so that's AI and security, it's clear our concerns have diversified. We have a number of concerns rising to the top of what cloud experts see as major risks. So let's look at this. When we asked, what are the greatest risks to cloud computing in the next 2 to 3 years? There's security, which we talked about, but it's not like security is the lone standout there. It's not like one big bar that says AI and security. It's pretty well matched and spread out among geopolitical supply chain distribution and politics, get tied into that a lot, increased regulatory complexity, energy and resource constraints, skills talent shortage, market consolidation. So you can see that it's pretty well spread out. About a third of everyone is finding these concerning. It's not just one. So we're going to quickly focus on each of these. Geopolitics, it's about protection and security, while politics and economics tied to politics are changing. So if we were talking about last year, people feeling like we were on uncertain footing, that's us again, but now shifted to geopolitics, notably representing a call for European data sovereignty and strengthening efforts here on the continent for cloud efforts. Regulations. Tied also that to the international nature of the cloud. It can be both frustrating on a day-to-day basis to try to keep up with regulations, nerve-wracking on a larger sense to make sure you're staying compliant, and also everything's always changing. These two, geopolitics and regulations, it feels like things that we can't control. So these are really, frustrating, stressful, understandable that they would be at the top of the concerns. Our European experts that we talked with really agreed with that frustration with regulations, but also added that that's a larger existential concern, in that if innovation is hampered now, into the future, it could put this entire, this region's industry at risk for falling behind. Energy, it's a concern of, just when we're getting excited about AI and we're using it a lot more, do we have enough resources to keep going? Also the concern over the cost, especially if we have to pay for, more infrastructure and things like that. Skills and talent shortages, it comes back to that human error behind AI. We've asked for the last few years if people are concerned about AI having negative impacts on people being able to maintain jobs in this industry. That's never risen to the top as a concern. It just hasn't been something people are real concerned about in the cloud industry when it comes to AI. But this one did come up and this year, and it's more about, AI, it allows for streamlining, it allows for, more clean operations, but you also need people who know what they're doing and who have the ethics to be able to use it in the right way. And finally, market consolidation of a real threat seen when we talked with people about US-based hyperscalers stunting growth here and limiting competition, raising prices, vendor lock-in, things like that. We heard this from the experts too when they expressed concern about the ability within Europe to compete with hyperscalers, and they would be calling on, again, it makes it feel sort of powerless on an individual basis, but calling on regulatory bodies to be more supportive to allow the cloud-based tech industry here in Europe to be competitive, to thrive. So I started with all the bad news, sorry. But so let's not forget that optimism still hasn't fallen, it's plateaued, it didn't go down, and there's a general sense of, a cautious but cautiously optimistic, strong future ahead for cloud-based tech. So when we asked about risks, you could see that it's spread out. It was pretty even about how many people were concerned about what risks. When we asked about what opportunities do you see ahead for cloud-based tech in the next 2 to 3 years, we saw sort of three, main ones that emerged. European cloud sovereignty, that was the top one. It was really interesting to me that half of respondents said that's a significant opportunity moving forward, followed by enhanced security and AI at scale. So we get the sense that, what's interesting to me here, the 3 greatest opportunities were the 3 greatest risks. So there's a sense that if we can get past those risks or really dedicate ourselves to those risks, they're also the opportunity points, which is exciting. European cloud sovereignty, like I mentioned, half of respondents said it's a major opportunity in the near future. People seeing that this is it's a time of threat, but also opportunity. If we, finally understand that we need an EU version of the cloud, it answers the large US giants. This idea of people coming together and community working together is a real opportunity. AI, we talked a lot about the threats of AI. It's also seen, it's one of the most significant opportunities seen ahead too. And it's interesting to dig into the data set and see why that might be. So while it's still seen as having risks, it prompts significant optimism for streamlining, for innovation, and confidence has really increased with use, even just in the past year. Last year when we asked, how confident, or do you agree that you feel confident about how to use AI to optimize your business? Last year, only 2 in 10 respondents to this survey said yes. This year, it was now 5 in 10. So it's gone up to half of the industry feeling confident. Hopefully, we'll see that continue to grow. And then this year, we're seeing, a majority of 65% saying that AI is a tremendous opportunity for positive growth. So it's not without risks, but it really has opportunity as well. When we looked at it, that rise in optimism also probably comes from seeing that more people are using it. More than a third of respondents reported having increased investment in AI recently. More than a third of respondents reported having used it to do more product development. When we asked about the most common ways people are using AI, and that was something people said they wanted to hear a lot about, was the case studies, what's going well. What have other people done that I could draw inspiration from? It was similar to what we heard last year, both from our respondents and from the experts we talked with, customer service, content generation, code generation, and optimization. But we did see 2 interesting other ways it's being used that seem to be employing it exactly for the reason, or what we're hoping to serve clients, which is we're hoping to serve clients with reliable service that they can count on. It both helps them, but also helps companies to retain their clients. So predicting maintenance, we heard multiple respondents tell stories about using AI to optimize hardware performance, to conduct predictive maintenance, and to delay any downtime. And then traffic optimization. We heard about people using it to learn from traffic flow in order to improve performance for clients and prevent internal headaches so we don't have to all have hair on fire moments when things don't work. So, and we talked about security. AI and security are intertwined as perceived risks, as we've talked about, but they're also intertwined as perceived opportunities. Last year, more than 4 in 10 respondents saw AI as a significant security concern. We talked about it already, that it's still a concern, but it's dropped. So significant concerns around the safety and security of AI and cloud computing now fell by, from 43% to 25%. That's a big drop. So the more people are using it, the more people are feeling good about it and what it could do. Enhanced security, we really see a lot of people saying that this is a major concern, as we've talked about over and over again, but it's a major opportunity for success if it can be slain. If we can feel better about security, that's going to do a lot. And there is a perception that AI could help get us there when it's used the right way, and we feel comfortable with it, and it can operate at scale. We heard a quote about this from Virgil, who was really helpful. He put it very well, that I think cloud providers have become better and better at the security side. They've invested a lot in this, meaning AI and security, and you rarely see something that impacts them. Those core opportunities of enhanced security, AI at scale, and European cloud infrastructure coming together are what everyone also said they most want to learn about for their current business health and their future business health. So those also ranked as, I want to learn about AI, I want to learn about protection of data and creating effective business strategy, which also, those two of AI and protection of data, that's what everyone wants to learn about here. And that's why we come together. And when we talk about that the risks are the same as the opportunities, that's why we're here at CloudFest. This is a time when we asked about what would make you feel better. It's that people can collaborate. There's a cautious optimism in the room and in the entire event space that can be nurtured and fed to work together amid changing technology like AI and other things, amid global changes that feel out of our control. But if the main opportunity was that idea of European cloud sovereignty and working together, this is a place to come together to learn, which was expressed as a major interest, and to strategize together, as business strategy is consistently one of the most important things people say they need to learn from each other and together about. Sven put it very well. He said, I think there's something for everybody at CloudFest. It's really interesting to look at the different companies from diverse segments and see how they could be a potential partner. And that's what we kept hearing from people about this idea of partnership is going to be what helps those 3 opportunity points that are keep moving up in the positive direction rather than falling more as risks. So that European sovereignty, AI, getting to know it and to deploy it well, and especially for the benefit of security. That was me speed talking through it. I really appreciate y'all's time. Like I mentioned, the whole report will be available online. And I think Christian's going to come up and we're going to talk a little bit about some questions and then open it up to the room. Because it was these are your data sets that I got to enjoy.
Hello, everyone.
That's it?
Yes, of
Okay,
course.
let's
Sit
take a
down,
seat.
please. So Jeff, our MOC, said there is some statistical data, and we're talking a lot of data, why you have to jingle up the CEO. I don't know what it is about, but you need to tell me. But I'm always glad joining you on stage. So this is the 3rd time we are doing that, and all of the times I also hand over the mic to the audience, because as you rightly said, it's your data set, it's your report. We are going to constantly doing it. And I hope that you maybe even have some questions on your own responses or your colleagues' responses. So whenever you have a question, it's a little bit hard for me to see, but just raise your hand. You will get the voice or the mic and have the chance to speak to your fellow colleagues. So please raise your hand if you have any questions. But before we do that, as I said, it's the 3rd time we're doing it. Brooke, have you seen any shift, anything that stood out? What did we do different? What did we do better to the previous years?
So what we've done over the past few years is we've made some tweaks to the survey. No tool is perfect, and it needs optimizing. What we learned was, if this is the CloudFest audience and the CloudFest community's, interest points that we're reporting on the state of the cloud, then we should really hear from you all about what you want asked as well. We have certain metrics we want to ask every year to do the benchmarking about optimism and confidence and things like that. What we started doing this year was we sent out an initial quick interest survey. And so you may recall getting this, and it was a one-question survey. It just said, what would you like to ask your peers at CloudFest 2025? And we got a great response, and that's where we saw the main interest areas of European data sovereignty, of AI and security, which were the same from last year. But that's where we got to see some things pop up that we hadn't heard before. Say, oh, this is what's bubbling out in the audience. So now the survey includes benchmarking metrics year to year that are interesting, but it also includes a dedicated section that every year will be tweaked and will be different based upon what you all say you most want to ask each other. So, it's not just me coming in and saying, oh, I want to learn about this. It's really what you all say you want to learn about.
Great, I love that. I try it one more time. Are there questions from the audience? You have the chance now to raise your hand, ask the question to Brooke, who spoke to literally a couple of hundred of your peers. Are there any questions? Yes? All right. Jeff, you're fast. Perfect. Oh, that was too far, wasn't it?
I was going to say, we're going to be making Jeff run.
Okay.
Two questions. One is, when was the data set questions actually answered? Because based on geopolitical, we all know that has different ramifications.
Who are you referring to?
Oh, I don't know, some guy with a hairstyle.
All right.
And the other one is, how big is the sample data? Because that also has a swing effect.
Right.
In comparison to previous years.
So in comparison to previous years, we've always been about 800 to 1,000 responses. This year was a little less because that answers your first question. We sent it out really recently. And we thought that was going to be really telling given the geopolitical situation. So this was all fielded about 10 days ago. But we still met, and passed statistical significance for the data, which is always what we want to make sure to do before we report on anything. And so the final number was about 750. On here it says 600.
Yeah. But you're right. There was a lot of changes in the recent days. Are there any further questions from the audience? I still will force you to get your hands up anyways, but if there is any more question in the audience, please stand up. I think that's even easier. Otherwise, there is quite a few different characters in the room, for sure, but also different taxonomy. So we have MSPs. Could you raise your hands? MSPs, raise your hands. Okay, there's one MSP. There's two MSPs. Corporate IT, somebody representing a company. Okay, that's a couple. Oh, that's all right. Quite significant already. And cloud service providers should be. That's on par. All right. So question to Brooke. Now we have seen these different audiences, and there's, of course, more because not everybody rose their hand. How did they differ? Like, did the cloud service provider look at a different direction than MSPs, for instance?
That's one nice thing about this. Every year we get to cut the data by business size, by business type, by time and industry, things, and by region. I did bring a cheat sheet because I can't keep everything right up here. So I was all ready to talk about MSPs if you want me to just speak to you. Really, while everything we talked about here today is the overarching picture, there were some differences that emerged by business type. I'll start with corporate IT providers, in that we saw the most significant interest in AI and in hybrid cloud. From those groups, we saw the most concern about AI security coming from the corporate IT providers. So the reason that this would be interesting, and again, I'll put in a plug for reading the full report because we get more into some of these subgroups and the crosstabs. It helps you learn how to speak with people, especially when you're here, if you're talking with them as a potential vendor or looking for partners, to know what side of the industry they're coming from and what might be top of mind. So corporate IT, we saw the most concern over AI security among that group. We saw the most interest in hybrid cloud options. For cloud service providers, we saw that they were the most optimistic at large, the most optimistic when it comes to the opportunity space of AI. And I will hit MSPs for just a sec. We saw significant concerns about security at large, but also a real interest in learning what AI can do for MSPs internally, how to streamline business, and we saw an optimistic view of AI coming from that.
And one thing about MSPs, we did the state of the MSP at MSP Global, our sister event, so to say. And the MSPs, I must say, they had a bunch of questions,
They
right?
did.
So this
It's a
audience
chatty
is
group.
bigger, but it's a little bit more shy. So
It's just post-lunch.
okay, it's post-lunch. Yeah, that's fine. So this time we did have quantitative research, so asking 750-ish people, but we also had qualitative research. So how does it feel? What does it add in value when we look at the report as such to have these qualitative research as well?
So we added in some what we were calling expert interviews this year with people who've been in the field for a long time who could elaborate upon some of these areas of interest that we saw come up in the interest survey. I think it added a lot, not just because it's always important to me to have the human side of research. Quantitative data is great. But another reason it was great was that one thing we keep hearing calls for every year when we field this study is saying, I want to learn from my peers. I want to learn from others about what's gone well, what hasn't gone well, what can I take lessons from and employ here. And survey data is great, and it really helps a lot. But being able to hear people speak a little more in depth about what's worked for them, what hasn't, it's integrated more into the full report. It has full quotes up here. But we got to color the quant data with some qualitative stories about, well, here's what I see. Here's what I'd like to have happen. And that's where we heard people talking more about the way they've used AI in their businesses, the way they've seen the industry shift in the past few years. Really drawing on stories from this group. And that's one thing I'd love to be able to do more of moving forward, because we keep hearing calls for learning from each other, which is such a nice thing to see at CloudFest. And I know that was an important part of the opening speech this morning, that this is the human side of a tech-based industry, that we can bring empathy and we can learn from each other.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. This is exactly why we're doing this. And also one thing that struck me when I spoke just recently to one major international cloud service provider, how he actually uses AI to learn about these use cases. So in this particular case, he was getting 80% of the first level support requests down by having an AI chatbot classifying the answers or classifying the questions, providing answers. I wish we would have such a solution for CloudFest, because you guys keep on asking me the same question. But that's my next development stage. One thing I particularly like is open-ended questions. So we had a few in this survey, but what stood out and what is the opportunity? I think it's a little bit in the direction of these qualitative interviews. But what stood out for you?
This is where I say thank you to everyone who took the survey. It's not a short survey. It's not the longest. I've worked in this field for a long time. There's some real big guys out there. But we did ask a number of open-ended questions and asked you all to expound upon it, saying, okay, you rated this a 4 out of 5. Why was that? Things like this. So we can learn more, and it's not just the numbers. This is where I appreciated the question about when the survey fielded, because I noticed this year it reflected that data point that we looked at earlier, where the concerns are diversifying. We saw through the open ends that people could expound upon the numerous ways they're stressed this year, and the numerous ways people feel like they are somewhat powerless at the whims of regulation, at the whims of geopolitics. Geopolitics was not something that's come up a lot, especially in open ends the last few years. People feel I'm thankful for the freedom in an anonymous survey to tell me what you really think. And so there was a lot of sort of passionate or dramatic language about the state of the world these days. That was a change. It's important to know, and just to know the temperature is a little different.
Jeff, you were giving me a signal.
Well, here's the signal. All right, so these guys are obviously just stunned by the quality of this presentation because they're just in silence. But I have a follow-up question. Maybe you guys can. Corporate IT folks, I love you. However, I want to talk about the CSPs and the MSPs for a second. I've been watching your presentations for the last several years, Brooke, and I'm noticing more and more MSPs in your data set. Is that because more and more MSPs are quite smartly joining us here at CloudFest, or are CSPs adjusting their business model to offer more managed services so their workload is migrating over towards the MSP side? What do you think?
Me personally, I think it's a mixture of both. So, of course, we have, and that answer probably strikes you because...
No, thank you for answering this one.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So, with MSP Global, we, of course, got a bigger footprint in your market. I still appreciate you being the one MSP in the room. So that, of course, helped us getting there. But you can also see, when I compare, when I started in this industry, 2011, all the CSPs were doing everything. From VPS to managed services to backup, they did everything. And now you see clear, targeted audience. They know their taxonomies. Many of them are going for end customers. Many of them are going for corporate IT, corporate IT even becomes a cloud service provider themselves. So there's a lot of shift, and I think this is reflected in the audience. Corporate IT makes up almost 20% of the audience this year, coming from 8% last year. There is a huge appetite in you guys learning from each other, maybe becoming, in a way, a cloud service provider or managed service provider. It's really fascinating to be in this industry right now.
We're over time, but I'm going to say last call for alcohol. You raised your hand first. You get the question. This is the last question, folks. Here you go.
Yes, so...
say your name and who you are and what your favorite color is, and you like walks on the beach.
Okay, can I start with the color?
Go ahead.
Okay, so it's blue. My name is Alberto Guzman. I come from Dominican Republic, but we mostly serve United States
Puerto
customers.
Rico. Right.
An MSP that also has an agency for software development. So we kind of go different exposures, let's say. So yes, the part that the MSPs are looking into threat versus gain is that mostly you have to be exposed to gain all these operational efficiencies that you can gain from AI, but you also need to bring all this security because as an MSP, you're exposed to many other clients. You're not serving only yourself. So when you expose yourself to many other, or you have a lot of clients that are exposed to these intelligence threats, now you need to have or the same level of intelligence to protect them, or even a better one. So that's why you see in the report a lot of things like, sense. Okay, this is good, but it is also a threat. So there's something that is scary, but it's also a thing that we need to embrace, and there is no way.
Exactly. It's a blessing and the curse. MSPs are the providing the truth and the trust. You're the trusted advisor of your customer. So if you get your right, the customer's going to love you. But if you do a mistake, you don't. And this is probably why there's some different answering in whether it's a chance or a threat. We are 3 minutes over. I appreciate the questions from the audience and Jeff, of course. I am very thankful that you guys took part of the session. A big round of applause for Brooke doing all this data work in like no time. I really appreciate it. And now it's time for our MOCs.